Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It has been a few weeks since I've done an upload because I've been extremely busy, both with work but projects down here too. Some things that I wish I could have put up on the channel, I decided not to just because I had a lot of work, a lot of stuff, didn't really have the time to just stop and record some of this stuff. But we're going to try and get you guys all caught up on what I've been doing. We're not going to talk about this. It's just some horn hardware that I've cleaned up. One thing is, though, we have a really cool secret project over here. I have a towel over the bells just because there's some stuff going on there that I don't want you to see quite yet. Super experimental horn. Hasn't been done to my knowledge yet, so look forward to that. But we're going to talk about the little horn teaser I gave you guys, I believe in the last video, of a red and white painted horn that was in the sink. Had some stuff. Some of you might be able to tell I've reorganized my horns a little bit more. All my K5HLs are in one shelf now, and then all my low manifolds, P horns, and 3 chimes are over here now. And reorganized my parts closet so that way I could have one shelf for a current project, so that way I could get stuff off the workbench and not have a bunch of parts in my way all the time. And that's where this horn is, so we're going to jump right into it. So here is the horn in parts after a very extensive amount of work. This horn, I wasn't even too sure if I was going to be able to save it because it was in such poor condition. A lot of corrosion. Corrosion was my #1 killer on this one. A ton of corrosion. This particular horn I traded for a friend, traded with a friend of mine. Gave him a raised letter K5LA in trade for this 40K 2005 non-raised letter K5LA. And the scope of work that I had to do to this thing didn't really hit me until I had it all apart, which took me a while. And so we're gonna pull some of these parts and pieces out and talk about exactly why this one is probably to date my hardest restoration so far. So we'll kind of take some stuff out here. We'll get the manifold. You guys can see I've already got stuff ready to go. Original diaphragms, original diffuser ring bolts, and original diffuser rings, all restored, ready to go. But we'll get everything out here and we'll talk about how much of a headache this has been the past few weeks. And actually, after getting it apart, I was kind of at a stopping point, sadly, because it was just so much work. I kind of had to think about how to accomplish what I had to with the lack of really good tools that I have. I have good tools, but some things were just a little hard. Did a lot of work by hand, a lot of sore hands. So here it is, guys. Kind of set out here on the floor. It's bells 1, 2, 3A, 4A, and 5. It's a normal K5LA. The tag, you guys can see there, 40,754. So I guess 2005 for the date on this. The one bell is everything's original on this horn, so it is it's all 40K era stuff. So the one bell is a unmarked one. You guys can see there through some of the chipped paint and everything, there's no one mark at all. The 4A, as I have talked about in the past, on one of my bell talk videos. This is a 40K 4A bell, so it's a mid bore, so it's a little bit deeper than half step, but not quite as deep as raised letter 4As. And then other than that, it's just a lot of standard 40K era stuff. We'll start with the manifold. So when I got this horn, it had spent quite a bit of its last few years on the back of a semi truck, right behind the cab, mounted on the frame, out in the open. A lot of road grime, salt, moisture, corrosion. This horn saw everything for a number of years on a truck that pretty much covers Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. And some of you that know of these states, wintertime can be hell. And so the corrosion on these was just, it was a monumental amount. And the way he had it rigged up was he had a base plug, and then this plug, which I put in myself because it did not come with a plug, he had a inlet here for a 3/8 inlet and plugged the bottom. So I do apologize. I wish I could have got step by step through this project. I did on the horn page on Facebook, so some of you that are on Facebook, you got to see the pictures and just how much corrosion, just all the hell that I had to go through to try and save this horn. A lot of work. But we'll kind of start with the manifold. So I got really lucky and was able to use our big mill at work and do the work that I needed to on this, because this was kind of a stumper for me. The base plug, and you guys can see just from how rough the bottom is, I did retop the bottom. It's still pretty rough, but you guys can see all this corrosion damage. Normally this is a really nice radius cut. This is very, very damaged from corrosion. There's a steel plug in here, and it was completely encased in corrosion. I had to chip it out just to get to the head. Really, really bad. You guys can just see from the post cleanup that it was pretty gnarly. Took a lot to get it out. I wound up having to completely drill it out, cut it out, and then retap the threads. Basically just threw a new plug in there. The piece that was in there was a brass piece that came out really nice. Not much corrosion there. I had 2 broken bolts on the manifold. I think, what side was it? So yeah, and you guys can see it looks a little gnarly because it was drilled out and retapped, but this bolt broke off, and I believe it was this one broke off. I was able to save a handful of the bolts without them breaking, but there was 2 that ended up breaking. Had to use heat and impact. Still ended up breaking 2 of them off. So I had to go through the work to drill those out, retap those, retopped. Excuse me, retopped the mounting pads for the bells because these had a lot of corrosion on them. Made sure all those were nice and flat again. Same thing on the sides. Every hole got retapped multiple times to get all the corrosion, all the crap out, and then cleaned up the tag a little bit because it did have some paint from the manifold on there. But other than that, just did a standard clean on the paint, tried to save as much paint as possible. Some of you that recognize the paint scheme on this horn will know what it's from. Paint, that side's a little rough, but 100 times better than what it was. So it's a lot of work on the manifold. Like I said, I took a few hours out of my busy work day and was lucky enough to get access to our mill at work and did all that work on the mill, or I would have had a hell of a time doing that in my garage. So very fortunate for that. So one thing I'll show you right off the bat here is just how how bad some of this corrosion got. So you guys can see here, this back cap is bent up and away from the power chamber. That is from the corrosion. The corrosion was so bad in there that it started to expand and pry up the back cap. And you guys can see where the bolts were, and then where there's no bolts, the corrosion really pried up on those areas. A lot of these bolt holes have cracks, but in theory, this back cap is still a usable part. I am going to test it with all the original back caps, and if they are failing, then I have new back caps that I will just have to replace. I want to try and keep as many original parts on this horn as possible, but if I have to replace the back caps, so be it. But I did what I could to save them. You guys can see this one's really bad. Crack right there where the corrosion just really started to pry that up and away. Shows you just how crazy that stuff can get. This one had, luckily, all the nozzle rings were in really good shape, damn near mint condition. Some of the support rings, though, were pretty eaten up, and this is one of them where it's pretty bad, but still usable. So you guys can see where the corrosion really started to pit into this. And you guys can really see just the damage that the corrosion caused, especially right there to that support ring, which is the outer ring here, the support ring. Really bad. But when it comes to the nozzle ring, and I have retopped these and cleaned them up the best I could, pretty much mint condition. So in theory, this horn should sound good. It will not, this particular bell won't be utilizing air as well as it could be. I am going to get a little bit more blow by through some of these low parts than normal. But in theory, should be just fine. It'll just use a little bit more air than normal. But yeah, you guys, this is all covered in thick white corrosion that I took a lot of time to chip off by hand, scrape, file, clean, all by hand. No machine work other than what I did on the Manifold. All of these bells were done by hand. And then the back caps. So this back cap, you guys can really see the cracks of where the metal was being pried away. No cracks on the actual seating surface for the back diaphragm. A little bit of pitting, but it is very smooth. Cleaned it up as good as I could. You guys can see I did file work around the entire radius of the back cap to get a actual seating surface back, and so hopefully it'll work. It should. In theory, I should be able to just put it together with good parts and it should sound. And if I'm wrong, then I have backup back caps. So, but I'm really hoping this will work because I really want to keep this horn original. You guys can see narrow font, small bubble, Nathan Air chime, just very typical. It's just a typical run-of-the-mill 40K era 2005 horn. Nothing too fancy, but the paint's pretty cool. So see if I can find the hole there. So I just got a couple bolts holding the back caps on for right now because I am still working on some aspects of this project. Not quite ready to put it all together quite yet, but we're getting there. So that was the two. The two was definitely one of the worst ones. The one bell, still, most of these had the corrosion damage to where it started to separate the back cap from the power chamber. That just really shows you guys how crazy corrosion can be. It's pretty crazy stuff. So here's the one bell. You guys can see pretty much mint condition nozzle ring, which is good. and then the support ring and that lower ring definitely had some corrosion damage. I filed away a lot of the damage on that support ring. You guys can see it's nice and shiny now. Pretty much took everything down till it was nice and even and flat, and then polished up the rings nice and smooth, so that way the diaphragms will sit on there nice and air can force its way in between the nozzle ring and the diaphragm nicely. You guys can see some more pitting there. All that was completely covered in corrosion. And 99% of the back cap bolts broke when I was taking them out. That really sucked, because that's a lot of broken bolts. By far, this horn has thrown the most broken bolts I've ever had. Oddly enough, though, none of the diffuser ring bolts broke, so that was nice. But all but, see if I can remember this, all but 2 back cap bolts broke on the number 2. Every single back cap bolt broke on the 1 bell. All but 2 broke on the 3A. Every single bolt on the 4A broke. And then just 2 bolts on the 5 broke off. So it was a lot of broken bolts. Used a combination of my table vise and a torch to get those out. There's no way I was going to be able to drill every single one of those out, and easy outs were not even an option because there's just too much corrosion. So heat was the cure for that. So here's the back cap on the 1. You guys can see a lot of pitting damage there. Tried to file a nice plane around, get the bolt surfaces re-leveled, and then just clean up the seating surface for that back diaphragm. All these vent holes, and especially these vent holes, were completely filled with corrosion. That actually took a lot of work to drill those back out. So there's the number 1. Trying to run through these somewhat quickly, just so you guys can kind of get an idea for how much work I've had to put into this, and just really hoping it sounds good after all this work. Like I said, worst comes to worst, I just have to use new back caps. I have same era back caps, but they're basically brand new. So I want to try and keep everything on this horn same era, even if I do have to replace the part. So here's the back cap for the 3A. You guys can see a lot of pitting. You guys can see where all the corrosion was right there. All that was completely covered in white corrosion. Pretty thick stuff. And then once again, kind of like along the bottom side of the bell, you guys can see where the corrosion was really bad. You guys can see where it attacked the support ring. Pretty decent right there. This one will have a little extra blow-by than normal. But nozzle ring, pretty much mint condition nozzle rings on this, which is our saving grace pretty much. I've seen pictures, and the guy that I consulted in on some of this on this particular project, he sent me some pictures of some horns or a bell that had this whole lower part of the support ring was completely gone. It had completely corroded away, was gone, and he said he did no machining, just cleaned it up, and it was still a usable part. So even with the little bit of damage that I have on some of these, in theory, everything should work really nice. I just hope the original back caps are still good enough, even after my file work that I did on them. So there's the 3A. And show you guys there, it's got the big stamp days still. You know, this is before they started doing the small stamp on the raised letter. And casted 3 on there. I gotta show you the 2. And then the 4A. So here you guys can see a lot of pitting in the back half of this one. Like I said before, that was all just straight up corrosion, just full white corrosion. Those vent holes were completely blocked. Cleaned it all out as good as I can. Still some staining left behind, but everything is super clean now. And you guys can see where I did my file work around all the bolts to level those all that back out, and then get myself somewhat of a good seat right around the inside there. Overall pretty clean though. They shined up pretty decent. Even with the corrosion on them, they're still pretty shiny. So here's the 4A. Like I said before, it's 40K parts, so this is that mid-step bore 4A, so it's slightly deeper than the half-step bore. And if any of you haven't seen my my bell talk about number 4s, and you're curious on what I'm talking about when I talk about that, go back and watch that video. And here we have, a little bit of damage on that support ring. Nozzle ring, other than just some light staining, it's in really good shape. This horn, like I said, guys, this horn should sound pretty nice after it's all back together with all the work that I've done to it. But you guys can see just what that corrosion does to this aluminum. Can really eat it away. And this is hands down the worst corrosion I've ever seen on a horn. It was bad. Really bad. Kind of show you guys all around there. So screw these back on. I just doing this that way I know what back cap goes for what bell, and I don't mix any of the parts up. Because like I said, I want this horn to be as original as possible, even with all the broken stuff. And then we got the number 5. Oh, I guess I should show you guys the 4A here. You can kind of see it through the chip paint there. 4, cast 4, big stamped A. Five bell back cap. Did a lot of scraping in these to get all that corrosion off of these surfaces. Took my time to make sure I didn't gouge anything, and a lot of scrubbing with Scotch-Brite pads, and then went back over everything with 0000 steel wool to smooth everything out really nice, shine it up really good. And then here's the 5 bell. Just a little bit of damage to the support ring. Like I said, as you can see, I filed that all down. Filed all that really good smooth, so it's level with the nozzle rings, and the diaphragms can have a good seal, at least on the nozzle ring, even though I will get just a little bit of extra blow-by on some of these bells. The 2, I'm going to get a lot of extra blow-by on that one, but some of these aren't as bad as others. And then you guys can see the number 5 kind of covered in paint a little bit, but so that's been my past few weeks. Is just chipping and scrubbing and scraping and cleaning to try and save this horn. Oddly enough, as much damage as it had, it was a completely working horn before I started the restoration. The only thing is I never got to hear it, so I did not get the chance to hear it before I pulled it apart. But I'm getting really close to hearing it now. We're like in the last home stretch here, and I'm gonna see how good some of the rail fans are on here, not just the horn guys, but the rail fans. We're gonna set all these here. I'm gonna ask you guys a question, because I know but we'll see if the real dedicated rail fans know. So, what railroad had horns painted like this? And specifically, what were they on? What did they run on? So white and red. What did this horn come off of? Little question for you guys. I know, and I have two possibilities. I don't know for 100%, but I have two good candidates that I know what it came from, cab number wise. So if you guys are pretty good rail fans out there, you should be able to look at that and know right away what kind of horn that was. So, or what railroad it was. So yeah, guys. So there's the update on that one. Yeah, one hell of a project. I mean, I had this thing apart, all the broken bolts laid out, and I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this one. I really, I was unsure of if I was going to be able to save this horn or not, just because of how bad the corrosion was. And we'll take a little trip, and I'll show you guys proof of the broken bolts that I had here. So here's a cup completely full of all the bolts that broke. Here's the two foot bolts that broke, 3/8 foot bolts. And then the plethora of heads that broke off of the back cap bolts. All those 7/16 heads all broke. So yeah, that was not a fun project. I mean, it was fun in the sense that it was sure challenging, but I could go without doing another project quite that intense again. But it is exciting after, especially my before and after photos. Like I said, if you guys are on the horn page and you got to check this out, you handful of people that are actually on the horn page there, really got to see just what I was up against when I had this thing all apart, and it was a doozy. So we're basically in the last stretch. I pretty much just have to pick out some cushion rings. Like I said, I was able to save all the original diaphragms, cleaned them up, restored them. The diffuser rings are all cleaned up and restored. All of the original diffuser ring bolts have been completely restored. And then some of the hardware that I had laying on my table over here are some of the foot bolts. Now, clearly I have a full set of foot bolts here again. I took two that I had in stock because I wanted all same era bolts because of the way the text is on the heads. So all but two of these bolts are of the original bolts, and these bolts were in pretty bad shape. You can still see some just light corrosion staining on some of them, but other than that, I ran a dye on a lot of these threads to clean them up multiple times, so these are still good, usable bolts. And then some of these are the original bolts. I think I had like 5 or 6 back cap bolts that didn't break, and I ended up restoring those. And then these are all same era bolts, so I'm going to get the originals back on there plus whatever I need from new old stock bolts, so that way everything is same era and as many original parts as possible, even down to the bolts. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for this video. Like I said, I am truly sorry that I didn't get a lot of this stuff on video just because it was a lot of work, and it was pretty tiring some nights, a lot of late nights. My hands hurt really bad from chiseling and scraping and tapping and the bolt holes and doing all that stuff, and it was just a lot of work that I didn't really feel like filming. But we're to the point where I can kind of show you guys the aftermath of this, and hopefully I can have a fully functional horn again, and hopefully it'll sound good. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and so yeah, thanks again for all the support, especially the people in the group that are also on YouTube that gave me support through this project, because like I said, a handful of you know just how hard this project was for me and everything that I went through. So I really appreciate all the support, appreciate the support on the channel. Uh, Sorry again that I didn't get a lot of it, but uh, hopefully the end result will make up for that. And until next time, take care.